think it's a really interesting transition into this Sportico article. Sportico article? I think it's how you pronounce it. They released a list of the top 50 most valuable clubs in the world, taking into account each team's revenue, real estate, and what is quoted as other business metrics. So they describe in their calculations that they have three major buckets. It's broadcast, it's commercial, and it's match day. Broadcast is domestic and international media deals, as well as prize money from competition. Commercial is the sponsorships, advertising, corporate hospitality, catering, and non-match day events. And then that incorporates, of course, jersey sponsorships and kit deals and things like that. And then, of course, match day is ticket sales, membership income, cup competitions, preseason tickets, things like that, right? You have your Euro teams taking the cake, right? Real Madrid leads the way because they are winning everything and are writing off, I'm sure, a ton of their expenses illegally, just like Chelsea. And because I think Chelsea are top five, you know, the way that you do, selling your own hotels to your own sister company and just handshake and
That
say, yeah,
that
don't
sounds
worry
like a
about it.
Barcelona move if I've ever heard one.
Well, it happened to Chelsea too. So let's not deflect there, little guy. Um, but MLS has five teams valued over $1 billion in the top 20 and 19 out of the top 50 in a league of 30. That's impressive. That's nearly two-thirds of our team in the top 50 of our league in the top 50 in the world, right? And that's impressive, especially considering where we were, I mean, 10 years ago. We're doing MLS history retold right now, 15 years ago. We're 2010, and I'm watching some of these games back, and I'm like, goodness me, this is not good, right? To think that in 15 years we'd be here, crazy. But I want to get your thoughts on what this means and what it can possibly lead to in the future.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Let's just get it out of the way, right? Like, in no way, shape, or form does this mean that, like, I'll just use one of your metrics, for example. Like, no way, shape, or form does this mean that MLS has five of the best 20 teams in the world. Like, I think both of us are clearly aware that, like, there's a lot of metrics that go into valuing a club, and it's not really tied into necessarily your performance solely on the field. So, like, I don't think any of those five clubs that are in the top 20 are probably anywhere near the top 20 clubs in the world. I think we still have a long way to go in terms of that regard, but I definitely think it is promising. I mean, the more the clubs are growing in terms of like their value, I think that's better in terms of, how much they're going to be able to spend and how much reputation and power they're kind of building within the soccer spheres. Like let people say whatever they want to say online, right? Like people, your typical Twitter trolls can come in there and dunk whatever they want to dunk on MLS about, but I think the people that are like in the operations of different clubs around the world are probably looking at this and maybe like being more cognizant of what MLS is doing and potentially, like keeping a sharper eye on like what they're doing over there. Their facilities, their players, like youth academies, like, maybe some teams are like, all right, if their valuation is going up, maybe they have really good facilities there. And, maybe we should keep an eye on who's coming through the academies. Maybe they have like, they'll start to generate like really talented young players because they have like good facilities to kind of build them up. So like I definitely think it's a good thing in the long run. I don't think it's necessarily like completely changing the landscape for the league. And I think there's a lot of factors that kind of inflate how MLS is looking in that list. But I'd say overall, I still think it's a good thing that they're being consistently in this mix.
You're telling me you don't think DC United's the 36th best team in the world? You really
They're
are.
36th.
You really are a Euro snob. That's wild. How
36? That's
how
crazy.
dare you disrespect the DC?
I don't even
Um,
think I don't even think DC United's the 36th best team in MLS.
oh, that's good. Even though they are above Atlanta United, but we won't talk about that. Don't worry about it.
Atlanta's probably like maybe bottom 40.
Yeah, for me, it shows that this model is working, right? In the first 30 years, the idea was to show that we could survive and thrive, right? Not just hang on by a thread, but show that we could really punch above or in our weight in the soccer landscape, right? Plain and simple. The Apple deal is a huge part of this valuation, right? That $2.5 billion is massive in this breakdown, right? You also talk about, real estate, right? The commitment for these owners to put down soccer specific stadiums and the brand new training facilities and all that sort of stuff is huge, right? Stuff we didn't have, right? Stuff that wasn't here. You had to convince people to do that. It's great. Likewise, has been a theme in this episode, not having the threat of relegation is huge to keep those numbers up as well, right? Sportico mentioned that that model causes a huge spread in revenue multiples for European teams, right? So I think Manchester United was like 7.5 times more valuable than a team in like the right behind, like two spots behind them or something, because they knew they weren't going to get relegated and they had all this other stuff. So they get like a boost or something. I don't actually know how it's calculated, but that's kind of how they made it sound. But this is all great, right? This is I don't see this. If anybody who looks at this and complains about this, oh, the revenue's inflated because there's no pro rel and it's only because you put down stadiums and blah blah blah. You're lame, right? That is a lame take. It is good to see us competing in the world in terms of value. That is a positive, whether you liked MLS or not, right? It's a positive because it allows us to put our name out there, like you mentioned, and have a good reputation of things that are thriving. And you see these teams are now getting linked. LAFC and Bayern Munich now have a link, and these teams are now like, okay, yeah, you're not just a pop up team. You're gonna be here. You're gonna thrive. You got people who are looking at you. It's gonna be great, right? But that's not to say that you can't complain about things, because the inflated fees is the wrong thing to complain about. What you should be complaining about is, now that we have the stadiums and the training facilities, it is time to push this revenue into players and on-field production. And the immediate extension of that is the roster rules. And again, we've gone down this, so we're not going to go deep dive into what this means in terms of how to change the roster rules. But this is tangible proof that we have valuations that are steady. The ROI is good. All of these business metrics that the owners care about, check, 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 right? Your boxes are there. You've checked them all. Awesome. Put it back into the team, right? And this is, again, going up the ladder. Allow your teams to put them back into the league, right? And hopefully they can change that in the next CBA, stuff that we talked about last week. But all of that's only going to increase their valuations, right? We kind of listed off what they're using to calculate these valuations. On-field performance. If you put a team together that wins a Club World Cup, or rather the Champions League, and gets into the Club World Cup, valuation increases, right? You put a team together that causes you to sell out every week, valuation increases. And guess what? There's no risk, right? This is the whole point. There's no risk, right? And you can argue whether you like it or not. I don't care. Not the point. If there's no risk, then this is where we should start being aggressive, right? The only people it's really going to hurt are the ones who don't do anything. So that's what I would like to see.
Well, this is going to be a very boring episode because I completely agree with you. I mean, it's been proven already that we're both on the same page on in terms of like roster rules. But yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think all the momentum is like with this sport growing in the country. I mean, like host for Copa America, Messi joins the league, hosting the World Cup, like so many things going in the favor of the sport growing exponentially in this country. Just please capitalize on it. Like clearly there's a lot of like good groundwork in place already. And I think that's showing in this valuations, like you said, you know, stadiums, youth academies, all this stuff is like set up. It's good. We have like good quality facilities and stadiums that are in place now. Please just like it's almost like the last piece of the puzzle is just let's build the on-field talent. Let's start to loosen the restrictions a bit. I don't think we're in a situation anymore where teams are going to potentially be dropping left and right if we loosen the restrictions again. I think people are smarter. They've hired like people who are like more familiar with the game. They understand things a bit more. I don't think they're going to be in a situation where you're buying players off of FIFA like we've talked about in the past. Like it's everything is pointing in the direction of really start to put the pedal closer to the metal. I'm not saying fully. I'm not saying like let's just get rid of all the roster rule restrictions, but like let's start to push the pedal. Let's start to, pump the gas a little bit here. Like let's move this thing along. Let's ride the momentum.
Yep. And the reason I wanted to put this after our first topic was because now we can kind of wrap it all together. How long do we really think that with Pro Rel these USL teams would get up to this level, or even close to this level, right? It took us 30 years to get here without that system. to put down the stadiums, to put down all this stuff. How long do we think USL is going to get there? And then that also is a brand of competitiveness, right? Market competitiveness matters, right? So if you're looking at a team like LAFC, who's a $1.2 billion valuation, they've got brilliant stadiums, great training facilities, and they want to sign you, or you're a new USL Div One league, let's say, and you've got a team where you've got no players, your stadium is okay at best, your training facilities are getting there, right? You're in the middle. So which one is a good player going to choose? Probably not USL yet. So that's going to take time to get there too. So that's kind of why I wanted to put that together because I think it shows how big that gap really is. And I'm curious if they've done this for every team, right? And see like where is the USL valuations. They don't really have a USL valuation, but in terms of transfer market value, and again, take that for what it's worth, you're looking at a team that is significantly, I mean, the gaps are significant, right? So that also plays a part to it, not just on the field, but in the boardroom as well, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to just keep beating the USL horse, but I just don't think that Pro is all of a sudden going to, like you said, get them into a space where they're going to be competing against MLS when, MLS can be like, all right, we could pay you more, we could bring you to state-of-the-art facilities, and you could be playing potentially in front of 70,000, or you can go to USL and have Pro, but now you're losing out on a lot of these things where you're going to have like downgrades. Like, let's just be honest, like the facilities are not going to be at the level of MLS. The
Right.
crowds aren't going to be nearly as much, and like your competition isn't going to be as strong either.
Well, and I want to make it clear, it's not me beating up on USL, but it's raising what is, in my opinion, and people can tell me I'm wrong, what is, in my opinion, fair questions, right? This isn't me saying, oh, I hope USL stays down that way. I'd love for them to grow and do what they have to do. But I think it's a fair question to ask, how long is it really going to take, right? Because I think it's easy to hop onto Twitter and be like, oh, this guy with a blue check mark says that USL is going to close the gap with Pro Rel. It's going to be great. And then you go into it and the gap is massive for 10 years, let's say. I think that's something that people should consider, right? I'm not out here hoping that they are really bad. I feel like that's self-explanatory, but maybe not.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. Again, I mentioned it before. I don't want like them to have issues in terms of like not being able to stay afloat, but I quite frankly don't think that there is a model in place right now, and I don't think I know what the model would be where they could ever catch up to MLS unless MLS does something to hurt themselves. Like
Very stupid. Yeah, for sure.
MLS barely stayed afloat on its own, and they had relatively no competition in terms of other leagues. Like there were obviously other leagues existed, but there wasn't a league that was substantially ahead of MLS while they were trying to grow in the States,
Mhm.
where USL now has to do that same growth that MLS did, but now they have a competitor that is miles ahead of them at the moment. Like I just don't think they have such a I forget what the phrase is. There's a phrase I remember learning in school for it's like I can't remember. It's something along the lines of like first step advantage or something like that. Where MLS just like has such an advantage from getting up out on the front foot on this stuff that I
Sure.
just don't think USL could ever catch up.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, there's so much we can go into, and I don't want to dive too deep into it because we have talked about it a little bit in our past episodes. You can go check out our chats with all of our guests when we did stuff like that.